Well, guys, thank y'all so much for doing all this. This turned out super, super awesome. I'm like blown away.
Way more than I thought it
would. For episode 1 of Just a Conversation, this worked out almost too perfectly. It's not how it should have been.
It could be a letdown after this.
I feel like it will be. For anyone who watches this, it's literally all downhill.
Downhill from here.
Downhill from here. Yeah.
Shot our load in round 1.
Jesus. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, okay. I guess for starters, I really appreciate you just willing to be able to hang out with me for an evening and let us shine bright lights in your face and us try to be normal about just me learning about a topic that I have no understanding of.
I'm genuinely really honored that you asked me to do this. Like it's a near and dear subject to my heart, obviously.
Right, and that's really the reason why I wanted to do this was so to kind of give a little background for people that don't know. How did you and I meet? What's your story to this?
So after I got out of the military, I started working in 24-hour fitness, and as a personal trainer, worked my way up. That was 15 years ago. And you just happened to be the first guest when I was in my general manager trainee program. Like literally the GM who's, teaching me that day, he's like, all right, let's see how you do. Go take a guess. So I walk over, we talk, and we just like hit it off. And you're like, I was just going to check it out and do the 3-day pass, but I'll just sign up.
It's true.
And,
that is true.
And that was such an awesome conversation that you and I had at that point. And I was just like, I'm gonna want to hang out with this dude again at some point. And it was cool because the next time I saw you, we exchanged information and been friends ever since.
The rest is history. A lot of volleyball games and beers later.
Volleyball, beers, Yeah.
Well, see, my side of the story was I went to maybe look at buying a membership, and then this really intimidating guy convinced me that I have no other choice. And then now I still am trying to get out of this friendship, and I just can't figure it out. So anyways.
So I browbeat you into this.
Exactly.
You mentioned it, and I was like, dude, you have to interview me.
Pretty much.
I'm number one. I'm interview number one. Like,
that's how I recall it. But
that makes sense.
Well, and I appreciate you leading into kind of now how we've become friends and really what's led us to today. And what's been so interesting for me is over the last, I guess we've known each other for about a year now, almost.
Yeah, it's been almost exactly a year.
Today, actually, weird full circle. Today is the anniversary of me moving down here, which was whenever.
Crazy. So it would have been within a week of that.
Yeah.
It would have been a week. Yeah. This is crazy. It literally
what
been
a
like
year.
a year.
If 2020 wasn't like enough.
Bro.
but through this year that I got to know you, it was the first time I ever got to experience being close to someone that had really experienced a life a lot different than I had.
Right.
In the sense of giving yourself to a cause and putting your life on the line for other people in a way that I still can't really comprehend it. I want to get into that and understand, let others understand kind of what your experience was going through the military. But for me, it was just, over this last year, you've really opened my eyes to what goes on after you serve.
Yeah.
Because your story when you served was crazy enough as it is, but since we've had a lot of one-on-one conversations over the year and have really kind of been able to open up around one another, it's just constantly blown me away on what you experienced just as much after you served as you did during. So that being said, I'll shut up. I want to hear, so the whole point of this conversation is for you to educate me even more than what you have already. I want to understand what you went through and now how you are.
I'll start with the first time I realized that I had trauma, that I was not dealing with. And how that was is a guy that I was deployed with. His name was Nick Becker.
Yeah.
This was 3-4 years ago. I can't remember exactly. There's been a lot going on.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
He committed suicide, and he was a guy that, again, I was deployed with, and we've lost So many guys. Like we were there for a year.
So this wasn't the first time one of your friends died.
Correct. Like we lost 16 guys while we were in theater in my battalion. So out of 600 guys, 16 died, including my company commander, Bill Jacobson, a really good friend of mine, Clint Gertson, along with, many, many others that, just it's crazy.
Was that during one tour? Like,
yes, in 1 year. So we were deployed in Mosul, Iraq, which is northern Iraq, about 30 miles from the Syrian border.
That sounds so familiar. Like, back in the, that's a big area.
It's about 2.5 million people at the time.
Okay.
And it has since become, it had since been taken over by ISIS, and that was like their stronghold.
What year was this?
That I was there? I got there October 2004, came back at the very end of September 2005. Okay. And in that year, like I said, we were doing 10-day work weeks. So it was 9 days of missions, at least 2 missions per day, going from our forward operating base, FOB. Mm-hmm. And so it was basically just hooches that we, like cargo containers. Gotcha. That were our rooms. And they had a door, a window, and some air conditioning, and you had your bed and your locker, and and that was it. Yeah, paradise in the sandbox, right? Uh-huh. But then we'd cover the windows with cardboard because we wouldn't want them to be able to see the light. In the evenings we had bunkers all around. There's because we were taking mortars on our base almost on a daily basis. Like they'd go set up, pop it off in our direction, and next thing you know, something's blowing up somewhere on base. Yeah. And so over the course of that year, I mean, essentially over 600 combat patrols. Out of 600 guys, we lost 16. At the time, more have died from, cancer. Like, there's just so many other factors that you bring home from combat, whether it's suicide, whether it's exposure to some kind of chemical, like the smoke, like there's so many things. Like, I mean, but when you go to war, like that's a risk.
Sure.
And that's just kind of one of those things that you accept at the time. You don't realize, you don't think about it at the time.
Why did you join in the first place? Because that to me, I envy people that have that capacity, that care that much, or give to that extent. But like I guess I'm a really selfish person because I could not do that. I'm not.
So I found out about this group called Merging Vets and Players. And it's founded by Jay Glazer, Nate Boyer, at Jay's Gym up in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. And it's just an amazing organization where, recognizing the correlation between athletes and veterans, retired athletes and veterans who have kind of had to step away from who they were for so long. Like everything about this person, this is who they are. And then one day they wake up, they look in the mirror and they're not that person anymore. And I had that exact same experience when I got out of the military. Like it was just like, okay, this is who I've built myself into for 7 years, and suddenly, just New Year's Day 2006, I am not that person anymore. I am no longer a professional soldier. Like, okay, what am I? Yeah. And it's an identity crisis. And for me, like I went back. So I went to Merging Vets and Players, started going to that, realized that I really needed even more help than I thought I did, and so I went to the VA, went to some counseling. It was okay, but ultimately she's just like, yeah, I don't think you have PTSD, like you don't have any nightmares, you don't have any other stuff. And I didn't step foot in a VA again for probably 12 years. Okay. Other than, if I had to go do some paperwork stuff, like just to maintain benefits of some kind. Mm-hmm. But other than that, like I really made a point to not go there. And I spent probably 12 years before I went. So I joined Vets and Players, ended up realizing, like I said, that I needed more help than, like I needed to dig more into my own stuff, like even outside of a group setting.
When did it start really coming on?
Again, it was when another one of, it was just when another veteran and a guy that I had deployed with committed suicide. And I was just like, you know what? I've been in the low places. Like I really need to find something. Like, cause there had been a point where about a year and a half before where I was having relationship issues. I was having anxiety. I was having issues at work. And I couldn't sleep. I was a mess. And for like 3 weeks straight, I literally went to bed every single night thinking about different ways to kill myself. And this was about a year before this guy before Nick committed suicide.
Yeah.
And that's when I was just like, and the thing was, is he had communicated with some of the other guys that we had deployed with, like, it didn't seem like there was going to be, like, he was in that place, but he'd hidden it so well. And that's when I was just like, okay, nobody knew when I was in that rock bottom place, or what I thought was rock bottom at the time.
Yeah.
When I was in that really low place, nobody knew. Like, I was able to put on this, facade, this persona that I was, I'm sure people knew that something was off, like maybe I was a little quieter, but they had no idea how bad of a mess I was at that time. Yeah. And when that happened, like when Nick killed himself, that's when I was just like, okay, I need to.
So it wasn't anybody you saw pass away during?
No. So getting back to the origin of this, I went to this counselor at the VA. Went like 6 to 8 sessions. It was like once a week. She recommended a book, and it was called "The Body Keeps the Score." And the biggest thing that I took away from her was, because I asked her, I was like, there's times where, like, I'm playing volleyball, I'm hanging out with my friends, and all of a sudden I am just in a blind rage because I feel like I got slighted, like, in the game. And I'm like, it's not
game, like life?
Like volleyball.
Oh,
like
okay.
Anything. Like, I just lose my shit and, like, super angry, super aggressive. And I started asking, I was like, why am I having this issue? And so she started explaining. She's like, most people, everyone has their fight or flight. Well, the difference is there's a large buffer for most people that's kind of like the gray area before they get to that decision of fight or flight. She said the problem is you're here all the time, like right below. So as soon as,
right on the edge,
like right on the edge, like all the time, like it's right there.
Were you always that way though?
Well, we'll get into that a little more in just a second. I'll get there.
I'm hungry. Give me something to chew on.
So I start reading this book, and I'm like, and I was like, I don't have any trauma from the military. Like, I don't have bad dreams. I don't, like, that's not where this comes from.
Because
like
PTSD can be like, there's like tons of different.
Like, she literally told me, like, you don't have PTSD from combat. Like, she's like, I agree, because I was like, I don't have any of the symptoms of PTSD from combat. Like, I don't understand, I don't think I have this, but something's off.
Yeah.
So I start reading this book, start exploring, and a lot of it was, again, The Body Keeps the Score. It's talking about how your body, your chemical responses in your physiology reacts to stresses that your mind even can almost create. So ultimately what happens is because my trigger was so high, any time that I got into that fight or flight level, like, I went straight into attack, combat, life or death, every time.
Interesting.
And and I was, obviously I didn't like do things physical, but I'd just be in a place where I'd just be absolutely raging inside, and just ready to just, like, nothing mattered. Yeah. And so I start reading this book, and I'm like, and what it really opened me up to, because I, again, reading about a lot of veterans that had PTSD and all these things, and then I start reading about, civilians with PTSD, rape victims, molestation victims, parental abandonment issues. And that was such a huge one when the parents, just when they created, when a trauma was created really young in the household, when you think that everything's okay, when everything's safe, you're in this nice, loving home, and then all of a sudden something happens to just completely wreck that image. And that's when a lot of these people, like, later in life, they were just like, I don't understand why I'm depressed. I don't understand why I'm angry. I don't understand why I don't talk about things all the time. And so then that's when I, was like, that's interesting. Like, and it was kind of in the back of my mind, like, stuff. I was doing other stuff. Like, I had my own business, started my own business, had my own gym.
Your life's happening.
Things going on. Got into a relationship that I was very happy in, or at least, it was the happiest I'd been to that point. And I just 2020 happened. It's really, really, I lost my gym in a lawsuit over that. And, I'm not going to
had some turmoil, had some
turmoil, went through some relationship issues. Then 2020 comes along, and I I realized that, I needed to figure out, more, like dig into myself a little more. But I needed to do more with my life. And so I started taking acting classes. And one of the things that, really helped me was trying to understand a character that I was trying to play in class, just in class, like, rehearsal,
Just breaking
like
down
put
a
in a scene,
character.
like a 5-minute scene, like what are the motivations of this character? What are the emotions? What are they feeling in this moment? And one of the, it was my third scene that I did in class, and it was The Guardian with Kevin Costner and Ashton Kutcher.
Yeah.
And I was Kevin Costner. And
You look just like him.
So I'm going through the scene, and I'm literally talking this kid through like the death of his friends because of my, the character's own experience with the death of his friends, and him being the only survivor, and Ashton Kutcher's character is the only survivor from his friends, and that camaraderie and that common ground, and it really started, like making me explore my own feelings, because I had to tap into those
So you never
emotions.
got into, like you never took the time to do that to begin with?
Never did, because I was so headstrong and so convinced that I was
nothing bothered
okay.
you or nothing.
We'll get in. I'll rewind on that in just a minute, and you'll understand that. So, ultimately, what happened? As I dug into this and started exploring, read more into the PTSD book.
Yeah.
Started really having, again, 2020 has been a mess, and it causes a lot of stress on a lot of relationships, I'm sure. And I dug in to myself, and I was like, why do I feel angry? Why do I feel insecure? Like, I really, really care about this person, but I'm like angry all the time. Like, why? And so then I started really digging into it, like, what are my insecurities? Where does my anger come from? All these things. And that's when I finally started, realizing that my trauma was from childhood, from when my dad left. And I understood at the time that he was leaving my mom. But what I didn't understand was when he basically disappeared from my life too. It seemed like at the time, like,
So that's the catalyst that started it all.
so that was truly, like, that's when I started realizing that was my trauma, and that I had been trying to seek validation my entire life from outside, because I felt like I couldn't even get my own father to care enough about me to show up when he said he would. And I mean, I remember like calling his phone like every 15 minutes, leaving a voicemail for like 3 hours straight when he'd be late to pick me up or something like that.
Did your relationship with your dad influence you to go into the military, or any, like how?
That was so my both grandfathers were Navy. And then I had an uncle who was in the Navy, and another cousin, but I didn't want to be stuck on a boat for 6 months at a time with a bunch of dudes.
No,
So, so what I was trying to do was I was running away from this person that I was so scared and so weak, this 10-year-old little boy. And so I created myself. I was like, okay, I'm going to create myself into someone that would protect that little boy. And so that's when I started going to the gym. I started, and then I joined the Army. And I was like, well, that's, and
that's
was
the ultimate alpha.
That was the
scenario.
ultimate alpha. Like, I was angry, I was insecure, and I wanted to prove myself. I wanted to prove myself to the world. And in retrospect, like, what I've learned is I was just trying to prove myself to myself. I had a chip on my shoulder. I was mad at the world. I was mad at everything outside of me. I was looking at everything outside of me with just this rage and this sadness that I had turned into rage, because the rage didn't hurt. Keep in mind, so I was homeschooled all the way through high school.
Yeah.
Got my GED at 17. My mom's super religious. So
whenever you turned 18, is that when you enlisted?
19. At 19 I did.
And then where did they send, like, what was your, did you immediately get sent off?
I swore in, I think it was January 23rd of 99. And then I shipped off to basic training at Fort Sill, Oklahoma on February 16th, 17th of 99. So it was like 3 weeks later.
Gotcha. So what tour was where did you see the most amount of?
There was only one combat tour, and that was Mosul. That was the last year that I was in.
And during that whole time, was it pretty high intensity, high danger, or was it
in Iraq?
Yeah.
Oh, all the time. Like I said, we were getting mortars on our base every day for like the first 6 months. We were in firefights all the time. I mean, we were to a point where we were getting so many suicide car bombs, we were able to enforce having every single taxi in the city remove the trunk lid of their car,
right,
so that we could
there's nothing in
see
it.
just by flying over with helicopters,
Yeah.
everything like that, to to be able to see, if they had anything in the trunk that, like explosives or anything like that.
Right. Jeez.
So it was, I've had RPG shot at me, I've been shot at, I've been blown up once, like, it was really, really, really intense for like the first 6 months we were in theater.
So, having gone through all of that experience, what could you? It builds a very alpha male environment, I think, and this is from an outsider's perspective. What could you have done? What would you have done? Would you have done anything differently to maybe help you not accumulate so much?
If there's anything that I could have done differently, I wish that I had just listened to people when I first got home that told me, go find a counselor. Just talk. Whether you feel like you need it, just talk. And it took me over 10 years to finally do something like that. And that's really started this process. But it was delayed for over 10 years because I was so determined, again, in my insecurity and my rah, I'm a badass mindset, that I didn't need help.
Right. So that's got to be pretty prevalent, though.
Oh yeah,
within that,
because
within
you have to make yourself believe that you're invincible. Like, how else are you going to go walk into a firefight? How else are you going to go walk down the street knowing that people are there putting bombs buried in the concrete next to you? Like, if you don't in your own mind believe that it's not going to happen to you, you'd be terrified.
Yeah. So what would you recommend to help people that are in that situation? Like, having gone through that journey, like having now kind of passed through, kind of getting through most of what you realize you really haven't processed.
So the biggest thing that I've come to realize is, in that insecurity, in that depression, in that anger that I was projecting outward, I felt that way actually about myself. And when I finally internalized and actually focused on myself and realized that all of the other issues in my life were caused by myself because because I wasn't okay with myself. And so that would be my number one thing is, so many people are looking for love, looking for happiness, especially veterans, because again, the military just tells you what to do all the time, right? And all of a sudden you're released into the wild, and then it's like, okay. And so you create missions for yourself, and then it could be a relationship, it could be a job, it could be something along those lines. But
did
again,
PTSD affect your relationship, with girlfriends?
Yes, again, it was the insecurity, the insecurities, the anger, the trigger, just constantly just being ready to boil over, right into fight or flight mode. That was that was a big problem in relationships in general. Yeah. Because it was just, I was so unhappy with myself that I was reaching outside of myself, looking for someone to validate and tell me I was okay and tell me I was fine. And then, and so I was able to put on this mask of being okay because everybody outside said I was okay.
Right.
But then all of a sudden, when I finally took that hard look,
you and your boys
inside,
never talked about that kind of stuff whenever y'all are out there?
You don't talk about that shit.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
I mean, I don't know.
You don't.
I've never been in Iraq hanging out.
No, you
dodging.
do not talk about that stuff, especially at that time.
Why?
Invincibility. You're invincible.
So if
you cannot, that is not, especially combat arms. Like, you are talking about,
I'm not made out for
straight
I'd be the guy.
Alpha males that are just everybody
hey,
out
dude,
there. Yeah.
how are you feeling today? Let's talk about.
That never happened. Not one time. 7
So
years
y'all
in the
are riding
military.
in the Humvee, just talking about chicks and drinking
Shooting shit,
stories.
drinking, all that. Like it is.
Okay.
It is all alpha
The
male.
ultimate alpha male situation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And and again,
do you think? But like, okay, dumb question. Do you,
not at all.
Does it have to be that way?
No, absolutely not.
Because I feel like if it wasn't, a lot of people wouldn't struggle this hard. Like if
Well, there's a couple of things.
Maybe
First
I'm
of all,
wrong,
the
seeing it wrong, but
you know, a lot of the people that are a lot of the guys are in the combat arms. You know, they come from a similar mindset. Like for me,
I get it. To even go into that program, you've already got to be wired a certain way, and that's not like, hey, let's have some coffee and talk about our feelings.
Right.
I know that's not the that's not the personality.
So then,
but like, what could you had that person? You were that person. You were wired that way.
So
during
I was
that time.
exactly what they were looking for. I blew away the ASVAB. Like I had a 129 GT score, which the max is 130. That's a general technical score, which is the most important. Like they're the one. That's the one. My recruiter just goes, "Oh, that's your score? Okay, out of 206 jobs, you qualify for 202. What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to blow shit up."
Clearly you were like the ideal candidate.
Right.
So like, what would you tell?
My biggest
help
recommendation.
Your 18-year-old you.
18-year-old me. Honestly, at that point, I don't think I could have done anything
you're so
different.
green, I guess that's true. You wouldn't be able to.
I didn't know any better. Again, coming straight from homeschool, and like I was homeschooled all the way till 18. Like my social interactions were.
I was already low.
Like it wasn't like I was in
really,
school.
You met all of your closest friends.
My initial real social exposure for the first time was at 19 years old in basic training.
Wow.
That was the first time that I lived with people besides my parents, that I was with people every day
Talk
besides
about
my
jumping
parents.
Off the freaking deep end.
And then, so then I was at Fort Sill, Oklahoma for 6 months, and I spent 2 years stationed at Fort Benning. That was my first duty station. And I went to South Korea for a year. I was there when 9/11 happened.
And that whole time, so you're going through all these phases from at a rapid rate, like you're changing your environment entirely. Like I got anxiety when I ended a relationship and moved from Studio City to Redondo Beach. Okay, like I can't relate. But honestly, so during all of that chaos, and then how long were you in service before you were shipped over?
6 years.
Okay, so you were in deep.
Well,
you already had a good lay of the land.
5.5 years. Oh yeah, I was a staff sergeant. I was an E6 when we deployed. I got promoted very quickly. I mean, I've been a sergeant or in some kind of leadership position almost since I was 21.
Okay. So whenever you're in a leadership position like that, do you not? And again, dumb question. Like, do you not care? Like, do you not care? Would you not care about how everyone was thinking or feeling, or like, is it just that's the mission? Like, we are here.
Now, this is again. I have a unique perspective.
Because I'm sure y'all are all going through the same thing.
I was homeschooled. So I never had like a teamwork. Like for the last like 2 or 3 years of homeschool, I didn't even have my brother wasn't even living there. Okay. So it was literally just me. Like I didn't have a team.
So you were going through all of this stuff just by yourself?
By myself.
In general.
Yep. Like I said, this is my initial social exposure was basic training.
That's a big overwhelming
accumulation. And the thing was is I adapted very quickly. Because again, I had taken 8-9 years of processing all these transitions and changes from when my dad left. So all these.
So you already kind of had a little jump.
So I was able to transition to whatever I needed to at that point. It really didn't. That wasn't an issue.
Change was not the concern anymore.
Again, it was always looking for that validation outside of myself. So I was always like.
Now I'm going to prove
top
it.
of my class. I was the distinguished honor graduate of my advanced individual training course. Again, got promoted very quick. I was a battalion commander's driver at Fort Benning. Like all these things. I got 5 Army Achievement Medals, 3 Army
when you're out there,
medals.
Like you're in Iraq, and I don't even know what your worst day was. But let's say it's your worst day. And you come back to wherever your box that you sleep in. no one's chatting about what happened, like the day, like what, like process, like how, are you processing any of this in real time whenever it's happening?
I'm gonna blow your mind right now. I did not have a bad day of combat.
Okay.
It was exciting.
Okay.
I had come from a town of like 2,500, 3,000 people. I was homeschooled all the way through high school. And then I spent 5-6 years training for combat. And then I finally get to go do it. This is literally the ultimate proving ground for the person that I've tried to become.
You always wanted to be.
All the way to this point, like I want to be the hero to that 10-year-old little boy. Like that's who I'd built myself into. And so the ultimate proving ground was combat, life or death. And I was ready to go.
So there's no days that you regret, or was it that?
I mean, even when I got blown up, like that scared me. Like I felt like, okay, there's a chink in the armor. Like when I got, blown up, my face, kind of melted a little bit. And so that was was an awakening moment. But then even then, like within 2 to 3 weeks, like I was back out on patrol, and at first I would duck.
Bothered you
At first I would
during
like
the
duck
time.
Down every time a car went by, because again it was a suicide car bomb. Like I was inside of a fireball, and so that was, I would say that was maybe my worst day. But even like getting an RPG shot at me, getting in firefights, like shooting a guy, like that stuff was just, again, that was what I built.
That's what you were
myself
waiting
for.
Yeah.
Was to go be this soldier. Their families that just.
Did you see other guys you worked with struggle with processing?
Again, it was just, I mean, yes, but, and I honestly, I'm more aware of it now because I
like
have.
In reflection, like in hindsight, you're like, oh, Bob was probably a little on the struggle bus.
Yep. And I mean, now, like, I can talk to a veteran for like 5 minutes and know whether or not,
Really? I
mean, not no, but like, okay, this, he could really use some support, or hey, this guy's in a good spot. It's. When
you weren't in a good spot, was there anything anyone could have done to change that, or was that just all on you? Like, could you seek would you tell someone, like, go talk to someone, go to counseling?
I've
or
told
were you
people,
like, I was in a place like it didn't matter.
I thought I was doing really well until this year. I thought that merging vets and players and reading, the book and meeting with the counselor, like I thought I was in a good spot.
So this whole, like, just
this
for the last
year, this again, starting with the acting class and forcing me to start looking into my own emotions and realizing
that's when the light bulb started.
That's when the light bulb, and
dang, I have not gone through.
I haven't processed anything ever.
Yeah.
Like where does this emotion come from? Why,
So through that reprocessing, so like now that you had that aha moment.
Yeah.
That I just so happened to stumble upon. What have you done to process what you experienced?
Well, there's this really good friend of mine who introduced me to some material that really, focuses on.
Oh, I see where you're going here.
Monitoring your reactions. I think his name was Jordan.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing that I took away from the little video that you sent me was learning how to control how I respond. And that has been a real big thing for me. And my response has always been based on what happens outside of me. And again, it's out of my insecurities, out of my need for validation outside of myself, because I didn't like who I was. I wasn't accepting of who I was. And what I've been able to do now is like give myself visual reminders when something outside of me happens, to, before I react, before I respond, before I, go nuclear on the world or whoever's in front of me.
Yeah.
Like to remind myself to look inside and, okay, is this really this serious? No, it never is. It never has been.
So you just started working on yourself.
Yes.
You didn't really seek any help or
I read so much. Audiobooks, reading.
Yeah.
talking to just people in my life that I respect, that I care about, talking about their experiences, finding out that, you know, for the first time in my life, I do have peers that have similar thoughts and experiences because, again, being homeschooled, I never expressed myself that way. I never had friends.
Such an interesting case study
yes.
on the whole thing.
Yes. So for me, I'd never really had that outlet of like, you know, peer, you know, male peers
evaluation
that were civilians that like, I was like, okay, these guys are going through the same shit I am. Okay, so maybe I'm not such an oddball. Maybe I'm not so weird. And I started reading Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. I was recently introduced to the Four Agreements. But it's all about just really understanding that everything you project, everything that the world sees, like you have the choice of what they see. Of how you present yourself to the world, but you have to make that conscious decision every single minute, sometimes every single second, depending on it just really comes down to choices and decisions and response.
So it's lowering the elevated little barrier.
100%. Like it gives
you a little more buffer.
So much, like the buffer, and honestly, like so I reached a point finally on Saturday. And this has been an ongoing process that I've been really working on is overcoming this anger and this insecurities. And it was just, I finally reached a point on Saturday, I was driving home and I just said, and I realized that I didn't feel angry. Like purely no anger in me whatsoever for the first time that I could remember. Like probably 30 years. And
I forget you're that old.
My thought, what'd you say? Bastard. I was driving home and I literally realized like I genuinely don't feel angry about anything in my life. Like I am at peace with everything. And I was like, holy shit. I've lived with anger for so long.
It was the norm.
It's time to live now. Like I don't ever want to be angry again.
Right.
Like I'm, you know, just.
So once you kind of get past that barrier of like connecting all the dots,
I have that belief, that love of myself, that confidence, that again, because I finally looked internally, I finally dug down to the bottom of my anger, my depression, and all those things, and when I dug all that stuff out, it was just like I have done this to myself. I did this to myself. And the big thing that I've been doing is actually reaching out to people that I know that I've hurt in the past because of my anger and things like that. And I've been reaching out and making apologies. And even if they don't respond or anything like that, the biggest thing is just I have to get it off my own chest for my own conscience. Is just acknowledging that I've hurt people with my anger, and it wasn't intentional. But I created this persona, this intimidating, you know, if you liked me, I was going to protect you.
Sure.
Like I wanted you to feel protected.
Yeah.
Like that was, again, because that's what the feeling that I wanted. People that needed protection, like I wanted them to feel that because I didn't feel that as a kid. But if you were there, if you had a problem with me, if you had an attitude, if you, you know, if I felt like you were, you know, threatening someone else, like then it was like I'm gonna terrify you if I can.
So to bring this home, I want to ask one thing, because Veterans Day to me, I grew up in a very small town in Texas, and we have a lot of veterans in our town. I think we enlist. We have a large of our population per capita.
Yeah,
so
in Texas,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, and so we'd have, you know, every in school growing up, you'd have your veterans, you know, services, and we'd get a little pep rally group in the gym, and we would have a little service for our veterans in the city. And I always remember the day kind of came out of nowhere. Like I never planned for it because it was never a huge part of my life. But what does Veterans Day to you mean? Like now, having gone through everything you've gone through, how does Veterans Day sit with you? Like what does it mean to you?
For me, it means a day that my brothers and sisters who are fellow veterans, whether, you know, past, present, future, or whatever. It's the day that we reach out to each other, recognize each other, just even grab a drink by yourself and, pour one for the guys that aren't home, that didn't come home type thing.
Yeah.
That's kind of our thing, at least the way that I see it, and the way that my friends kind of react. And we do have people that say thank you for your service. Mm-hmm. And it's awkward sometimes because they don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
And you can tell when people are just, oh, thank you for your service. Like, they're just like, I'm supposed to say that. Mm-hmm. But then there are people that genuinely say it,
like,
and you can tell that they're like, I know this is so cliche. I want to say something else. I don't know what else to say. Uh-huh. And started thinking about it. It's like, okay, well, how do I make that into a conversation? Mm-hmm. And I know Nate Boyer, he's one of the founders, again, of MVP. His biggest thing was when somebody says thank you for your service, mm-hmm. he responds with thank you for being worth it. Or just you were worth it.
That's good.
Right?
Yeah.
But again, that's just kind of I feel like when someone genuinely comes up and says thank you for your service, like, there's a curiosity there. Mm-hmm. They just don't know how to ask. They don't know if it's okay to ask.
Right.
Right?
Would you want them to know that it is okay to ask?
What I intend to do now, when I'm just trying to figure out how to word it, because I don't want to come across as being a dick.
Yeah.
And we all know I'm a very direct person, so.
Yeah.
It's not intentional. I'm not trying to be an asshole.
How can they do
that?
But
my thought is, when somebody says thank you for your service, thank you very much. Out of curiosity, what does that mean to you? Mm-hmm. And just ask them, like opening myself up, like.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking. What does it mean to you?
Like what is my service? When you say thank you for your service, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Like, do you have questions, or mm-hmm. really just opening myself up? Like, if you genuinely say thank you for your service, and you're just like, then I want to be able to
connect with you.
Exactly, because you show that genuine interest. Like, I want to explain it. I want the next veteran you come across for you to be able to help them in some way, even if it's just a smile.
Yeah.
That you can relate to them a little bit better. If you
so on this Veterans Day,
yes,
what should we all do for you guys? How do I approach? What's something that would mean a lot to you if I saw you walking in the street and wasn't immediately intimidated and thought I needed to buy a 24-hour fitness membership? What can I do? What can I do that means something?
Again, like walking up, shaking their hand, and genuinely looking them in the eye and saying thank you for your service. Mm-hmm. That's again. Well, I mean, I know it's COVID, and so I'm not supposed to shake hands and all that stuff.
You're forgetting it's
so
COVID.
Weird. This is so
weird. It is so weird. By the way, we've all been tested, and I think a few of us have COVID, but I'm sure we'll be fine.
We'll live.
Yeah. So okay.
So that would be my really, and honestly, there are veterans in everyone's life. They know them, even on the periphery, somewhere. They know a veteran.
Yeah.
On Veterans Day, if you only know one veteran, send them a text, send them a message, call them, go see them in person, invite them out for a drink. Spend even just that little bit can pull someone out of
wherever they're at.
Yeah, whether they're because again, around Veterans Day as well, that can be also when veterans feel the most disconnected, because there is no one that they can open up to, no one they can talk to. Yeah. So if you want to help the veterans in your life, just reach out to them.
Yeah.
And not just on Veterans Day, especially on Veterans Day.
Sure. I think Veterans Day, so that's kind of how
Veterans Day.
I remembered it. Is it's a day to remember that people experience things a whole lot different than what you experience as a normal American.
Right.
And that is the way I always connected to it. It was always a day that reminded me that, man, I do need to talk to these people. I do need to understand what they went through, and I do want to know them on a deeper level, because what they've experienced is entirely different than what I
ask.
Okay.
Thank you for your service. Where did you serve?
In fact, that's the only reason I wanted to be friends with you, was so I could dig into this and better understand.
So basically, I'm cut off tomorrow after this,
So yeah,
after this gets posted, after Wednesday.
You probably
done,
won't I probably won't respond to any of your texts anymore.
Ghosted.
Yeah,
Ghosted.
Exactly. Yeah, 2020. Yeah. No, well, dude, I appreciate it. I appreciate you opening up about your journey as a kid and your dad, and how it led to you joining, and how joining got you to here it today, and us meeting and just educating me about your life, your journey, your processes, your struggles, what it's like to be in the military.
Yeah.
And it's been cool. It's been cool, and that's really been one of my favorite parts about our friendship. Is it's really given me a deep dive look of kind of the life that you led.
Well, that is one thing about having looked outside of myself for so long. I'm an open book.
Yeah,
I'll talk
really
about anything.
You have been.
And
you
now that, but what's even more, fun now is now that I understand where my thoughts are, where my heart is.
Yeah.
It makes it so much easier to even talk about it then, and with even a better perspective.
Yeah, and that's why I knew you'd be okay with doing all this mess. So
yeah,
it worked out so
But again,
perfect.
the biggest thing that you can do for the veterans in your life is just talk to them, ask how they're doing.
Yeah.
Ask them about what they did.
Doesn't take a Veterans Day to do it.
And if it doesn't take a Veterans Day to do it, but especially on Veterans Day, just reach out. Hey, just thinking about you.
Yeah.
Thanks for your service. Like if that's all it is, if you just shoot a text like that, I promise you, at the very least, that's going to put a smile on their face for even half a second.
Sure.
They're just going to, hey, that's cool.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes that's all it takes to pull somebody that's that disconnected from civilian society, to pull them out and go, somebody gives a shit.
Yeah. Somebody cares.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely care, and I really appreciate you having this talk.
Love you,
It's a
brother.
good conversation. I love you too. This was great.
COVID.
Don't call or text me because our friendship's over.
Let it